As the saying goes, Iran has more money now than it knows what to do with. Sadly, the main thing Iran knows to do with money is fund terrorism. New figures show the greatest flow of Iranian oil to China in at least a decade. And as the Daily Caller reports, overall, Iranian oil sales are rebounding as the Biden administration has adopted a more conciliatory approach to dealing with Iran than the Trump administration. Iran has generated about $80 billion in revenue from oil sales, defying U.S. sanctions that were under the Biden administration because of lax enforcement. So China is helping fund terrorist aggression whenever this oil money goes to fund Tehran's proxies and partners, like Hamas and Hezbollah. Naturally, the Communist Chinese Party doesn't care. They're happy to buy sanctioned Iranian oil because they're able to get it at a discount. Bloomberg reports that as of August, China was purchasing about 1.5 million barrels of sanctioned Iranian oil a day. According to Robert Greenway, the director of the Heritage Foundation's Center for National Defense, who also helped design Trump's Iran sanctions, the facts are indisputable. China is the principal customer of Iranian oil. It's in contravention to sanctions that we're enforcing. I've studied the IRGC people for 35 years and have fought them. I've seen every bit of U.S. intelligence produced over the last 35 years pertaining to them. And he goes on to say, I can tell you that the IRGC benefits directly from oil sales in about 10 different ways. Well, a spokesman for the National Security Council insists, this is false. The Biden policy on sanctions to ensure that Iran is unable to sell oil to new purchasers is a complete success. And there are no plans to lift, waive, or provide any new sanctions relief for Iran. Sounds like some more gaslighting from the administration, as China is clearly buying the oil. Here's Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen lying about the sanctions on Iranian oil.
We have not in any way relaxed our sanctions on Iranian oil. We will continue to do that. So I don't have anything new to announce.
Yeah, Biden's coordinator for strategic communications, John Kirby, also maintains that sanctions have not been weakened. As an aside, Kirby has also said that although Iran has, of course, been broadly aware of Hamas terrorist activities, there's no evidence that Iran was directly involved in this particular attack, or that they specifically cut checks to support this.
Make no mistake, Iran has a degree of complicity here. They've been supporting Hamas for many years. Training, tools, weapons, capabilities. So nobody's walking away from the fact that Hamas wouldn't be able to function if it wasn't for the support that they get from Iran. What we have said, and our Israeli counterparts have said as well, is we just haven't seen any direct evidence that they were involved specifically in these attacks.
Good grief. I mean, it sounds like the same convoluted rationale that they used to claim that Joe wasn't involved in Hunter's business deals. If John Kirby is telling the truth, a laughable idea, given his track record, and we have no evidence that Iran was involved, Iran sure was suspiciously quick to jump in and start issuing threats. On Sunday, after a meeting on Saturday with the leader of Hamas in Qatar, the Iran foreign minister posted on social media, quote, if the Zionist aggressions do not stop, the hands of all parties in the region are on the trigger. The responsibility for possible opening of new fronts of resistance in the region and any escalation of today's war directly falls on the United States and the Zionist regime, end of quote. Oh, they attack. And of course, it's our fault when it escalates. One of these parties that an Iranian official mentioned is in Lebanon, which is home to the Iran-backed Hezbollah group, which has been clashing with Israelis at their border for years. Hezbollah's heavily armed presence is yet another example of Iranian oil money being distributed to terrorists. Oil money given to Iran by China. Financial analyst Larry Kudlow at Fox Business News explains very clearly how we know the White House is gaslighting us about sanctions being in place on Iran. In just a few years, Iran has gone from producing about 400,000 barrels of oil per day to about 3.5 million a day, and they're on their way to 4 million. Where's all that oil going? Well, Iran has a favorite customer, China. The numbers are staggering. In 2020, Iran sold China about $6.5 billion of oil. In 2021, Biden's first year in office, that number skyrocketed to $23 billion. In 2022, it leaped again to $30 billion. So we're talking about $60 billion flowing to the world's number one sponsor of terrorism in just a few years. With all that money from the Communist Chinese Party, do you really think Iran isn't implicit and complicit in the attack on Israel by Hamas? As Elliot Abrahams at National Review pointed out on the day of the attack, quote, Hamas depends heavily on Iranian funding. Iran was broke when Donald Trump left office, but now it's pretty flush in cash. That's not just because of the recent deal for U.S. hostages, but because the Biden administration has not been enforcing oil sanctions, end quote. The Iranian foreign exchange reserves, which were about $4 billion 3 years ago, are now at $70 billion. How did a sanctioned nation rack up that much foreign currency? Sanctions against other countries are passed by Congress, and they're the law. There are primary sanctions, which prohibit citizens and companies of sanctioning country from engaging with any sanctioned country, like the current circumstances with the U.S. and Russia. And then there are secondary sanctions, which stop third parties from banking or engaging in commerce with the sanctioned country. In the case of Iran, these gave banks around the world a choice. You either stop dealing with Iranian banks, or you're going to lose access to the entire U.S. dollar financial system. That includes over 90% of the world's transactions. China is clearly doing business with Iran, and they're still clearly doing business here in the U.S. So how are those sanctions going? The execution of these sanctions is monitored by the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Asset Control, or OFAC. If Biden were enforcing both primary and secondary sanctions on Iran, then the Iranians would not be producing and selling all that oil to China. In other words, Janet Yellen, well, to be blunt, she's lying. And terrorists are using Chinese money to kill Jews. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I hope you'll help get to 1 million subscribers on our end by subscribing to the channel below. Be sure to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments section. Make sure to watch the Live with Mike live stream this week. I'll be covering more of the news of the week and answering your questions. And if you want more of my news analysis and commentary, be sure to sign up for my newsletter. Go to MikeHuckabee.com to do that. It comes to your email inbox, and it's totally free. That's going to do it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.